It's like, it looks great in my driveway. I can sit in it. It's dope inside, but I can't drive it anywhere. And the level of frustration they're experiencing is incredible. It's really, it's not worth it. They just really need to buy it. It's going to make mistakes when you start going through multiple compactions. That eats up your tokens. It's really a mission control station, and you can interact with the agents from there, and then it can start taking actions on your behalf. So calling it a dashboard is not really fair.
All right, I want to start by getting an understanding of how the room was this past weekend, Mike. I know you were part of a pretty dope lineup when it comes to AI, the Claude Code Day, and I actually had a friend of mine attend. I don't know if you got to speak to him, but I told him it came highly. I was like, I vouched for the guy on stage. He sent me a text midday like, bro, this is epic. Thank you. So I wanted to give you that nugget, but nice. I want to hear more about what it was like in the room from the man who's part of the whole thing.
Yeah, so I spoke at an event called Claude Code Day here in Austin, and I've been to a few AI-oriented events around here in Austin, and as you know, there's a lot of tech here, and so I've wandered into rooms where people were talking, they're all engineers, and they were just nerding out on stuff that wasn't necessarily related to small businesses, or, they're talking about data centers, they're talking about data management, they're talking about, they're working for companies that are doing like 9 and 10 figures. Yeah. And so a lot of it was nice to see. Like Claude Code Day was different in that it was all small business owners. There was about 50 people in the room. Everyone owned a business or multiple businesses, and we're probably in like the 6 and 7 figure range. And a couple representatives from companies that were bigger were also present. So I learned a lot. It was my first time being able to be in a room full of business owners who are trying to figure out how to use AI in their business that's actually going to make a difference. And I learned some things from the other presenters. The other presenters were very sharp. And then also just my big takeaways were what is the state of AI usage in small businesses? And the gap was actually a bit bigger than I had imagined. I tend to get in this bubble where I think everyone does this to a degree. Is everyone thinks that, oh, of course, everyone's tracking on this as much as I am. They're spending hours and hours a day in Claude, figuring out how to use Claude Code and Claude Cowork. And then I get in there and I start talking about Claude Cowork, and people are going, where do I access that? How do I get access to that?
Where's the Cowork button? Yeah.
Well, you have to download the app first. And then that was what I realized is people weren't even downloading the app. So they had no idea that it existed. And all I have to do is go on YouTube and search Claude, and all this Cowork stuff is popping up, but it's going off of my personal history, of my search history and what I'm watching. And so it's feeding me much more technical stuff than what the average person is getting. So I really got a beat on where people were at. And, my big presentation was around, I think I positioned really well, not knowing exactly what to expect, because when I talked to the guys that were putting it on, I said, who's in the audience? And they were going, 20 to 40% don't really know much about AI, but they own businesses. And we probably got another 50% that are hardcore in it. And then when I got in there, I go, no, it's about 10% were hardcore in it. And I think part of it is they were kind of counting people who were using chat a lot, Claude Chat or ChatGPT a lot, in that category of the half. And so, it was just really cool because you and I have been putting together offers for businesses to consult with AI. And, I've only talked to, a handful of people one-on-one, and I've been able to be very helpful. We have people in the school and I can be helpful there, but to actually like step into a room and get face to face with 50 people in a single day was very enlightening.
Yeah, I feel like you get a lot more data because, I mean, for you and I, we're doing one-to-one touch points. It's very slow going. You get 50 business owners in a room right there. Like, that's a good sampling pool to get a better idea of, like, okay, where's the market actually sitting? And to your point is, oftentimes I get in the same tunnel vision of like, my corner of the internet is reality, right? Like, I'm watching these YouTube videos and I'm on these subreddits. So I'm like, oh, everybody knows this, right? But oftentimes the information we have is not always common. And sometimes it takes that break to identify, like, oh, wait, there's so much more of a gap between A to B, B being where you are, A being where they are. And we need to really start building this bridge between the two. What would you say you learned more from? And I imagine you said both, but from the other presenters on stage versus what you learned from the audience?
Well, the other presenters on stage, I picked up a lot of things that they were doing. One of the things I'm loving about AI right now is that anyone who's been studying it for a few, who's been using the agents for a few months is considered an expert. But there's like no standard of how to use these things. And so everybody is firing off on a different direction. And so anytime I get to hear how someone else is using Claude Code or Claude Cowork, it gives me more ideas on how I could be making mine better. And I hope I'm doing the same for them. So talking amongst other people who are like quote unquote experts in it. I spent the next 2 days. It was an all day Saturday event. So Saturday or Sunday and Monday was just going down rabbit holes and filling in gaps, noticing where they had some knowledge around something that I didn't. And I went to go fill some of those gaps intentionally, which was a lot of fun. And then I've also spent the last couple of days. So the other thing I learned from the crowd was just, what was it that they were interested in? What do they think AI can do for them, or what do they want AI to do for them? And I noticed that just there's like a level of frustration around just downloading an app and creating folders through Cowork and files and what file management means. And these are all things that anyone who's been living in the engineering world is already very familiar with. But now the average person is given the power of an engineer, and there are these structural there's simple things to learn. If you're a systems thinker, like if you can think in systems really well, it makes a lot of sense. For a lot of people who are not systems oriented, it could feel like a really big hill to climb. And so, one of the things is people really just want the result. They want, their sales and marketing to go smoother. They want their website to operate more smoothly. They want someone to be checking their emails for them. They want all this administrative load to be reduced, which all these things are possible. And people, I think, what they see. So one of the things that happened was somebody displayed their dashboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone had created like a really fancy dashboard, one of the speakers. And the guy that organized it, he was showing how to like create your own dashboard. And it is basically like you take his structure and you just put it into your system.
Yeah.
But what you would have to learn on your own, or you would have to go through the steps in order to build what he just handed people, that's a pretty big gap from being able to have like this mission control. You've probably seen it. Like Alex Ramosi posted the other day he had his Jarvis, and it looked like someone had set up OpenClaw for him. I as busy as that guy is, I seriously doubt he did that himself.
Which is an interesting note, because I was going to say, for the business owners in the room and anyone listening, there's two ways to embrace AI. It's learn all this stuff yourself, or like just know its value and have someone in your business implementing all of it for you.
Yeah, that was one of my big takeaways too, was if you would have talked to me a month ago, I was talking to business owners and saying, hey, you got to learn this. And then I spent a whole nother month has gone by where a lot of people haven't taken any action at all. And I've been super deep in it. And the gap of knowledge has just gotten much wider. It doesn't take very long for the gap to get big fast because everything's advancing so quickly. And the majority of my day, I have a lot of freedom. So like 80% of my day is spent in R&D. And so, just noticing like the idea that I was running with previously, which was, I think everyone needs to learn this there's no way that everyone's going to learn this to the degree for which they want it to be useful for them. The things they want it to do for them is going to require months of spending hours and hours and hours a day learning and then trying things out and having things fail and being okay with that. And I've also, some people who are not tech oriented, I've witnessed them try to go down that path, and the level of frustration they're experiencing is incredible. It's really, really, it's not worth it. Like the level of frustration they're experiencing is that they just really need to buy it, and they need to hire someone in their team. So,
which is probably the more expensive route, but I mean, you pay
well financially,
yeah,
there's opportunity cost. Is it worth 3 months? Say you spend 6 hours a day for 3 months, including weekends, in order to try to learn this? What is that? If you're a business owner and you're doing 10 million a year, what's your time worth? You really just want the result. You don't need to learn how it works. And I believe that to be more true than ever, because look, over the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a small percentage of us who help usher in the new technological age with AI. And whether you participated in the actual building of this or not, you're going to get the benefits of it. Like you could sit back and just let it come to you. Or you could be part of building it. The benefit of being part of building it is, there's rewards along the way for building it. And if it's something you enjoy and you're having fun doing it, yeah, join the club. Let's all build together. But if you're not, then that's also okay too. And so that was like a big takeaway for me there.
So you mentioned that dashboard, right? Like everyone just wants, they saw the beautiful dashboard. They want the end game. And actually that's my buddy who went to this seminar. He mentioned, he's like, oh, I think I'm in a good place. I could build a dashboard for myself. So you found that pretty much a lot of the business owners wanted it just done for them instead of climbing that arduous mountain.
Yeah. And the speaker did a really good job of saying, here it is, so that you actually got something. Now, everyone had a dashboard, but it wasn't connected to anything. So it wasn't really useful. So it's kind of like you just got the frame of you got the frame and you got the seat. You got everything. Basically, you got everything except for the engine and the transmission in a Ferrari.
Yeah.
It's like, fucking looks great in my driveway. I can sit in it. It's dope inside. But I can't drive it anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things I learned was people love the dashboard. And I think that's a really great way of showing what's possible and if you can show a dashboard that has been where the engine and the transmission have been installed, and it's feeding real data in there, and you can interact with it and send it off to do things for you, then I think demonstrating that will get a lot of buy-in. And so that's one of the things I learned was the dashboard will get buy-in. And I have another data point on this because I'm working with a real estate investing company, and I was doing a lot of market research, and I was talking to a lot of the people who would be the customers for this. And one of the things that surfaced, I did 12 1-hour interviews with people. And one of the things that surfaced is every time I mentioned a dashboard for them, the ears perked up, the excitement went up, they leaned in. And I go, okay. And then when I ran all the transcripts from my market research through AI, it solidified that. It said, yes, people want the dashboard. And I go, great. That's what you show people.
Yeah.
Hey, this is what's possible. It's going to take us 60 to 90 days I can give you a dashboard right now. Like I could literally send you a file, and in half an hour you could download it and you're going to have a dashboard. Now it's not going to be connected to anything. It'll just be
the Ferrari in the driveway.
you have the Ferrari in the driveway. And that's usually what gets people into the dealership, right? And so, but it's going to take 60 to 90 days of work underneath the hood, installing the engine. And then every engine is different because every business is different because every business is run by a unique individual with a unique offer and has a unique staff and processes and stuff like that. And so, yeah, the idea of like plug and play, I can plug and play certain aspects. And one of the things I'm doing right now is right now, if I come into a business, which I'm doing right now, is it can take me 60 to 90 days to build what's under the hood.
Yeah.
And it's specific to that business. But over time, one of the things I'm doing is I'm building modular things. Okay, this is like my starter CMO. I don't know if you saw in the full stack founders community, I dropped a CFO skill in there. I've got two different CFO skills I have like two different types of CFOs. I've got a CMO. I built out a brand architect. I'm building out a web designer. Right. These are basically like agents, right? We could just say these are agents to go with the common vernacular, but I'm building up all this knowledge base. And then what I can do is I can start with my core agent knowledge, and then I can start informing it with the specifics of that particular business. So what's happening is over time, the process will get faster because, I've got this sales agent, I've got this design agent, I've got this marketing agent, I've got all these different agents, and I can start plugging them in specific to the needs of that business and then programming them specific to that business.
Nice.
And so these dashboards that people want, it's just going to get faster and faster that we can deliver on that. But that's one thing I learned was people wanted the end result, and then you started talking to them about how to get there, and their brains would shut down.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I know we've said on a previous episode of rethinking our approach to everything with what AI can do, where, why dashboard? Dashboard is what we're used to now and what we're comfortable with, but AI can identify a leaking KPI before it's hit. AI can identify the number one highest leverage activity that must be done. So you could wake up, never take a look at your dashboard, and just get delivered with the highest value task for you and your business. Yet we still want the dashboard because of what we're used to and how our interactions have been.
Yeah, well, what's happening is the dashboard is getting updated. So it's showing the data, but you can also just talk to it, and then so you're getting both. So instead of saying, I don't need the dashboard, we're going to include the dashboard, or what we're now starting to call mission control, because it's not a dashboard is just showing you what's happening. Mission control is my ability to engage with what's happening on the dashboard and actually fly the plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in an airplane, you have the dashboard, but then the controllers aren't part of the dashboard. In most businesses, you had the dashboard, and then you had people that were the different things that would control things to change. We need to change the dashboard, how it looks. So you go do these things. Now what's happening is we end up with there's a dashboard, but it's really a mission control station, and you can interact with the agents from there, and then it can start taking actions on your behalf. So calling it a dashboard is not really fair. Mm-hmm. But that's what people were seeing. They were being shown a dashboard because it was just pulling information. It wasn't functional yet. And so that was just a big takeaway for me was, okay, that's a good thing to show people. It's like, what does your dashboard look like? So I think, don't be surprised if in the next week I post on social media what my dashboard looks like. And I mean, I've had a dashboard. I haven't publicized it because it's got a lot of client data in there. It's like as soon as you open up my dashboard, within half a scroll, you start seeing people's financials. And so like I'm not gonna display what's happening there,
I and your clients appreciate that. Exactly. Yeah.
And it's most of the stuff in my dashboard is so private. I would basically just be showing a screen where over half the stuff is blurred out. So like, I don't even want people to know all my clients' names, for instance. Like, I don't want to be
just a redacted screenshot.
Yeah, it's just so and then I could just post up a fake one. I could build I actually have a dashboard built on the side that I'm screwing around with. And you could have multiple mission controls and all that. But basically, at the end of the day, where we're at right now is all this stuff that happened with OpenClaw, where there's this idea that you can put a Mac Mini on your desk and that you can just send it off and do things for you. You can now do that through a Claude native dashboard. You can build that without the OpenClaw.
Nice. When you talk about the concept of mission control, I want to transition a little bit here because it's an issue I ran into for the first time. A friend of mine asked, and I know you mentioned this was a question during the seminar as well. So if I'm in mission control and I'm controlling things, or I'm in the Ferrari that now has an engine, I'm also going to need gas to get where I'm going. And the last thing you want to do is run out of gas when you're on the side of the highway and you're not at your destination yet. And to kind of take away the whole metaphor, we're talking about token spend, capacity, usage. And I've never had a problem with usage before, but as I'm experimenting more, I'm trying more things, I'm getting a little bit more ambitious, if you would. Like how robust of a skill. I know what I did. It was like building like a robust skill. I wanted it to do everything. It was like, it was for post-production. Here's a transcript. Give me everything. And that takes a while. And then it's like, hey, you've hit your usage for the day. Now for context and for the audience, I'm on the pro plan. I know at the very least, we recommend doing the paid plans. But for someone who uses the max plan or the higher dollar amount plan, there's still usage limits there. So I'm curious as to how we could be economical from mission control when we're deploying agents and we're getting more and more ambitious with the things we're trying to do.
All right. So let's split it up into two different. You have the novice issue. You're kind of, there's like the novice issue of running out of tokens. And then there's like the advanced version of running out of tokens. Say you built I know a brilliant guy here in Austin, and I didn't get the text message, but I had a few other friends who got the text message he was basically asking for money to buy more tokens. He had, he operates in a very cash-strapped startup, highly technical, very code heavy, and he's legitimately he's doing all the things he can do to spend the tokens wisely, and he's still just burning through all of them. And so that's probably not people listening to this show, but that person exists of like, I'm just burning through all my tokens. And once you burn through all your tokens, you can buy more. And there's a couple different ways. Like if you're doing some coding and you're doing a lot of API calls, which is not most people listening to this, then you can just burn right through a max plan of tokens. You can burn through everything. And so that's one side. And then the other side is someone more on the novice side. And on the extreme novice side is just like, they're just not paying enough for they're paying $20 a month. And they're going, oh, I'm paying $20 a month, but I keep getting, I run into the wall. I'm like, hey, you just got to pay 100. Yeah. You just got to pay $100 a month. That's all it is, which is the pro plan. And the max plan on Claude is $200 a month, which is what I'm on. And so for $100 a month, you get 5 times the usage of $20 a month. But for $200 a month, you get 20 times the usage.
Oh, yeah.
So you get a lot more. It's like 4 times more than you do at $100 a month. So if you're bumping up against something at $100 a month, you probably just need to go to the max plan.
And I would say this is an opportunity too. If you're spending $100 a month and you're operating in a business, this is a business expense, and you're likely leveraging that usage for save time. It's still cheaper than an employee, quote unquote.
Yeah, and so that's on the extreme novice side of things. And then, so the other, which direction I want to take this in. So if you want to, I started running into problems with my 100 token, or my $100, my pro plan. I think I was on the pro plan for like a week or two. And then I went to the max plan because I kept on running into my 5, it rotates every 5 hours. You can only spend so many tokens per 5 hours. And then I ran out of tokens for the whole week on top of that. So they're tracking 5-hour windows, rotating windows, and then they're tracking for weekly windows. So yeah, I think I kept on bumping into the wall, and so I just went to 200. I haven't bumped into anything yet. So, but there's something that you can spend less tokens in a couple different ways. One is if you're building skills, like you were just talking about, is being really intelligent about how you're building the skills. So, and a skill is just context about how to do a particular thing, right? And so we've got to talk about context. And so and context is just the amount of information you're bringing into the conversation. So if I bring in a lot of information, then it has to read through it's going to spend tokens to read through all the information. It's going to spend tokens to give you an output. So how much information you're feeding it and how complex the issue is and the problem you're trying to solve is going to dictate how many tokens get spent. And then how big the output that you're requesting to have put out is also going to dictate how much of the tokens get spent. And so we got to control for a few different things. One is when I'm building a skill, like I don't want it to be more than 200 lines in my .md file. So skills are built in that .md files. And so I want to keep my skills under that 200 mark. So one of the ways that I do this, lowering the context I give it, is if you open up my Claude, I've got between like my Claude system, I probably got 25 different skills in there. And then if I go into my different folders that are responsible inside of like coworker code, I have even more skills. So I probably got I have over 50 skills built up in my system at this point. And so what I don't have, so I'll break down like how I build my marketing skills. So I have a CMO skill, Chief Marketing Officer skill. And this is a skill that understands marketing on a really broad level, right? But I'm not going to ask my Chief Marketing Officer skill to write copy. I'm not going to ask it to do anything that is actionable marketing stuff. Mm-hmm. Its job is to direct and say, this is what we need. Like we need to design something. And then I have a skill that's specific to design. And I have a skill that's specific to web design, And I have another skill that's specific to presentation design. And so that CMO skill or agent, there's more to an agent than a skill, but every agent needs one. And what I found is people are basically interchanging. They're using the word agent when they mean skill a lot, but yeah, that's just some nomenclature stuff. But I'll call them skills for accuracy. And so the CMO can delegate to the designer, can delegate to the web developer, can delegate to the copywriter. And then even for the copywriter, I have a skill for my voice, and then I have a skill that writes emails. I have a skill that writes Instagram, X, Facebook, LinkedIn. They're all separate. So just in the copywriting lens, I've got maybe 9 different skills for writing copy and for every different type of copy. What I don't have is I didn't build a skill that just writes copy for websites, landing pages, Facebook, X, emails. I didn't have it do in one skill because that would make the context bloated. So 2 things are going to happen when you have bloated context. One is you're going to have a higher degree of mistakes and hallucinations. Because once the context gets to a certain point, the Claude won't actually read the entire thing. It won't read it'll read 80%, and then it'll start making
TLDR.
assumptions. Yeah. And so you're not satisfied with the output. So what I've learned is, like, I wouldn't want to hire, you got to treat it like you do with a business, is your CMO may be a good copywriter, but it's not going to be the best copywriter. They should have a general knowledge of what should be happening in marketing and how that's going to impact the business, but it should be delegating. And so one way to reduce your token spend is to be really good about how you're building out the skills. And I'm sure we could talk about building skills at some point. I talk about that inside of the Full Stack Founders community. And so people can go in there. I'm putting skills in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dropping skills in there all the time. So they can just rip mine and don't have to go through the process. Like, I built a skill yesterday. It took me 3 hours to build a skill. And I just put that in there. I'm like, here's the skill I spent 3 hours building. And then I've been using it myself the last 24 hours. And I had to go rebuild the skill real quick because I noticed it was taking me in a direction I didn't want it to go. It's the brand architect skill.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have a skill that's designed specifically for just analyzing and creating new brands, right? And it's a very dense skill. It's probably one of my more dense ones because brand is the foundation of every business, whether someone knows it or not. Everyone has a brand. Just how intentional were you in creating the brand? And that brand skill is one of the reasons I built it for myself, is because I have multiple brands under my name. And so underneath my name, I have multiple brands, and there needs to be a level of continuity between them. And they have to be able to fit together. And after using the skill for the last 24 hours and analyzing what I've built over the last few years and how it all fits together, it really highlighted what a mess it's been. And it's helped me organize it. But so one is you want really niche skills that aren't bloated with context and not too much information. And so you have your skill file, and then you have like reference files that are associated with that skill normally. So my design architect has I think 191 lines of code basically for the skill. And then it's got 10 reference files that are like 500 words a piece. So it's pretty dense. It's a lot of information. And in that, how you build the skill, what I don't want is it to go read 5,000 pages of context or references. The skill is built in a way that it knows when to access each reference. So the building of the skills is a skill in itself so that you can keep your token spend down and for your work to stay high quality. And so that's one way to ensure that your tokens don't get blown out of the water.
So what I'm hearing there, really quick is in terms of the skills, especially how you broke it down with like the CMO and how like even for your copywriting, you can go from a CMO skill to the web design skill to the copywriting skill to even your voice skill underneath. I wrote down in the notes like each skill is a position, right? Like if you were talking about a position in your company, you wouldn't have your CMO writing all the copy. They would be delegating down the chain of command.
Yep.
And, contextually, it makes sense as if like you're going to burn out the position if you just put way too much underneath their responsibility.
That's right. You're going to get mistakes. You're going to burn through tokens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about it just a human being. If you're a one-man show and you're fulfilling every role in your business and you're working 16 hours a day trying to do everything and do everything perfectly. If you're trying to do everything perfectly and you're just working, you're going to burn out. You're going to run out of tokens.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's better to delegate the responsibility out. And so that this is part of what I was talking about at the beginning of the show around the what's under the hood. What's under the hood is this whole system of skills and how they talk to each other, these agents, how these agents are talking to each other. And then that way, that's the stuff, that's the engine underneath the hood that makes the whole thing run. And so when someone sees a dashboard, what they don't see is the 100 skills that needed to be built underneath it. And beyond skills, there's some other things as well. There's some other memory files and some other things. And so that's one way to keep the token spend down. The other thing, which is adjacent to this conversation, is context window. And skills are operating inside of a context window. But say I have a chat going on right now. I've had a brand. I've been doing like a brand chat, and I'm on my 4th iteration of the chat. And so have you basically, so you've gone so long in a chat that it says compacting or compaction happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've just given it so much. It's like, all right,
And so that's another way that you burn through skills and you lose valuable context and it starts making mistakes. If you hit compaction, you've gone too far. So for the average person, they go, well, I don't know what to do with this. I just hit compaction. So basically, when you run out of tokens when you're in a chat, it's trying to keep up with everything that happened up until that point. And then when you get to the limit of how many tokens you have for that chat, and it starts eating into, like, it's having to go back and reread everything that happened before this moment. And that's burning tokens going and getting all that information. And then, so the longer you've been in a chat, the more tokens you're spending per prompt.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I work is like I'm working on the branding for everything I'm doing. It's a long chat, because inside of branding, there's like 20 different things deliverables that it's going to have to produce on, which means it's got to ask me a lot of questions. So I built the skill. It's basically just interviewing me and it's asking me to make decisions, and I'm boom, boom, boom. And so one of the things I've gotten really good at is I don't want to hit when I'm doing something important, which most people are doing something important. If it's something that's not a recipe for chili tonight, you're probably in this long chat where you're going to hit compaction. And what happens when you hit compaction is it then does a best guess at what it should remember. So compaction just means I'm going to try to take everything we did before and I'm going to create a little storage file, and I'm going to set aside what was important, and I'm going to intentionally forget a lot of what happened up until this point. So if you notice that once you hit compaction and you hit multiple levels of compaction starts happening sooner and sooner.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you hit compaction, not only that means you ran out of tokens for that session, but also it's going to start making mistakes because now it doesn't have the full, it shows what it should remember instead of you choosing what it should remember, right? And so this is where the handoff doc comes in handy. So what I do is I kind of have a feel now for when I'm running out of my context window in a chat or in code or in co-work, doesn't matter. I start getting a feel for what it is. And it's not always has to do with the length of the conversation. It could have to do with the amount of reasoning I'm asking it to do. So I a few weeks ago was in Claude Code and I sent it off on this really long mission. And it came back and was like, look, we're going to have to compact several times to complete this mission. So we're going to make mistakes and we don't want to make mistakes. So you need to break this up into smaller bits. And so I kind of got a feel for the level of reasoning that I'm demanding of AI, and I'm tracking how long we've been talking. Both are true. And what I do is I check in. I'm like, hey, how much more memory do we have for this chat? I just ask it, and it comes back and it says, hey, we're at 50%. So my rule is when we get to 60, I don't want to go beyond 60%. If I hit 60%, that's okay. 80% is technically okay, but anything over 80% and you start getting in the danger zone of both spending too many tokens and then losing context. Because what you don't want to do is ask for a handoff doc for a new session before or after compaction happens.
Yeah.
So what I do is I track until I get to about 60%, because a lot of times I want to ask for the handoff doc. And when it gives me the handoff doc, I might have some things I want to change about the handoff doc. And I might eat up that extra 20%. Now I'm in the 80%. Now I'm in the danger zone as I'm trying to get the handoff doc. And so what I do is I ask for a handoff doc to take into a new session. And you could even build a skill to notify you of, of course, that eats up a little bit of tokens itself by just having it running in the background. So I kind of like to feel it out myself. So I don't have too many things running in the background. But what I do is I ask for the handoff doc and it knows what it is. If you just say, I need to create a handoff doc, how much more tokens do I have in this session? Okay, it's over 50, 60%, or I need a handoff doc, and then it'll tell you, it'll give you a file that you bring into a new session. You just open up a new window, or if you're in Claude Code, you exit out, or you open up a new chat in Cowork or whatever it is. Cowork's a little bit, I'm not going to get into that. So what I do is I then ask for the handoff doc, and then I bring that into the new chat and I start it all over. And Claude's really smart when you start asking for handoff docs, because as I'm working on the brand, I'm in this really long conversation, and there's clear stopping points throughout the conversation of like, oh, we got the naming nailed down. Oh, we got your onlyness statement down. It wants to get to the finish line, and then it wants to do the handoff. And so you can start tracking for where there's natural breaks in whatever workflow that you're in, where it'll create the handoff. Then you take that into a new chat and you start over with zero. You're back at like zero context window, and then you drop in this doc, which is going to eat up some context, but it's only the stuff that it really needs to know. And you got to choose instead of it just choosing for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you pick the relevancy of what goes to the next chat. That way you're in control.
That's right. And so when you start with new so if I'm about to go into something that's going to take a lot of complex reasoning to get there, what I do is I start a new window and I create a handoff doc and I start a new one, because the quality of work it's going to give me, where we're at 0% instead of 80%, is going to be dramatically different. So if you're working on something you don't want to make mistakes, do that. And so I've just heard stories from different people who they're like, this is bullshit. It's making all this mistakes and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, yeah, did you hit a compaction? How many times? Like, well, yeah, that just happens all the time. And I go, well, and there you go. It's going to make mistakes when you start going through multiple compactions. And so that eats up your tokens. Yep. So one of the ways I keep my token spend down is I'm working in trying to not exceed 60% of my token usage for a session at a time. So there's that. And then the last thing I'll mention is the model you're using matters. So we have Opus 4.7 right now, which eats up tokens faster than 4.6 did. But you also have Sonnet 4.6 and you have Haiku. And this is Claude specifically. And this really applies to all of these different models that are out there, just platforms that are out there. And so Opus 4.7 is going to eat up the most and it's going to do the most thinking. And then Sonnet's like 5 times less than Opus. And then Haiku is, I don't even know what the number is on that. But if you're looking up recipes, you probably could use Sonnet or Haiku. If you want to do really basic shit, you can do that. And it's going to eat up very few tokens. And so most of what I'm doing is Opus related stuff. I'm not doing a lot of Sonnet related stuff. In fact, I know some people doing some pretty complex stuff with Sonnet. I think there's like an argument for it, but I'm kind of like
on the fence. Not sure.
Yeah, I would rather I would rather eat up more tokens and ensure I'm getting the quality I desire, especially with the amount of reasoning that I have it doing. And just make sure I'm using the skills right. I'm managing my sessions right. I'm managing all the other things. If I start running into trouble outside of that, then yeah. So that's another thing to consider is which model are you using?
Didn't you also mention you have a skill that will determine which model's needed based off of the request, right?
I do.
So for folks who are listening and they're like, well, I don't know when I'm going up or down, like there's a way you can build a skill out where Claude will be like, all right, this is a Sonnet problem, or this is an Opus problem, or it sounds like you're having chili tonight. This is a Haiku problem.
Yeah. And so I have that skill in there, which I kind of like. That skill was useful for me in the beginning, but now I already know which one I want to use. But it was when I was newer to it, I knew that was an issue and I wanted to plan for it. But now I've used it so much that I already know, if this is an Opus or a Sonnet issue that I'm having to work through. So it's mostly Opus, but and then and the other thing is when we get into the whole dashboard or the mission control conversation is if you're running a mission control and it's going to start and there's heavy delegation going on there, you can eat up a lot of tokens really fast. So when you start getting into this mission control conversation, that's where stuff and you're spinning up agents and sub agents, and there's multiple processes happening at once, you can eat right through it really fast. And that's where the people who are more heavy coders, the more advanced users, that's the problem they're running into is they're doing really complex stuff and then they're sending multiple agents off simultaneously to handle this. They're sending out like kind of like a swarm.
Yeah.
To handle something. And then that eats it up really fast too. And so one of the ways to keep your token spend down for these really complex things is if you've built out a really good mission control, what's really cool now with Claude is you can build out a OpenClaw-like system where you have this mission control and it can actually go use Gemini. Or it can go use it can go and use another system. Like I can basically have my Claude mission control have Gemini go spin up some images for me or something like that. So you can basically distribute the load a bit. And so like Gemini is really known for being really fast. It's not going to be as sophisticated on the reasoning as a Opus 4.7, but like I wouldn't use a haiku in Claude. I would have Claude go and use Gemini to get something that we needed really fast. And so what we're seeing is the more advanced you become with some of these models, you can actually get to a point where these models are calling on other models. And so these agents can delegate to other agents that live in other models. And so it's a trip.
Yeah.
It's a trip. I'm not doing that yet. I'm probably like a month or two away from having that level, maybe a month, from having that level of complexity happening. And the only reason I don't have that happening right now is I have so many other projects that just need things to get done. Mm-hmm. The only people I know that are running really solid mission controls are, like an Alex Hormozy that probably paid a couple guys to build that out for him, and that's all they do is that kind of stuff, or somebody who's just like they have a development background, they are hardcore, and they've got the time, and there's not that many people that I've met that have awesome mission controls where they can run their whole business from this thing. I mean, I saw one that I'm about to, like the one I'm putting in place for myself. You can actually have agents with voices meet you and go to meeting. And you can have a meeting with your executive team, and then they'll go tell their agents to go do stuff for you. That's so great. Where this is going, and probably the issue is when you start bringing voices and video, you can even do video. You're going to eat up a shitload of tokens when you start bringing voice and video in. But that's where we're going. So I imagine in 6 to 12 months, it'll become a very normal thing where for people who want to spend the time or money to have that level. But yeah, we're very close to, like, I see how I'll be operating in the next 6 months will be, I'll hop on my desktop and I'll have this whole mission control show up. I've got my multiple dashboards. I've got like everything running in there. I can see the leads that I have. I could be in a conversation verbally and say, hey, we can just basically have a meeting like I would have with a team. Yeah. And then the other thing is on my phone inside Telegram, basically just having messages sent to me from the different agents. And then I can just be voice noting back to them. I'm doing a lot of voice stuff these days, but I can voice note. Yeah, talking is just faster than typing.
Are you using Whisper Flow or just?
I'm using Whisper Flow. I was a little hesitant on it in the beginning because it does record every keystroke you have.
Yeah.
So not just what you say, but actually what you type. So I was a little hesitant on that. I have it on my computer, but not my phone. And so that technology is interesting. But yeah, we're getting to a place where I'm basically going to have a personal assistant on my phone. And then I'll be able to have, I could even do the mission control from my phone too, but I think there is some value in having a big screen. I'm sitting there. I'm able to like actually see and grok everything. Yeah.
It's pretty. And it goes without saying, but I do want to address it, is for a lot of the business owners who just want the mission control, which I like the name mission control because it's definitely elevated more than a dashboard. This isn't a set it and forget it type thing. I've spoken to business owners before. They're like, oh man, I just want the dashboard. Like you have a Ferrari, there will be maintenance that's required on the engine. There will be, especially with how fast AI is moving and progressing, there will be upgrades to the technology along the way. So your mission control today does not necessarily maintain its same usage next month and the month following. You need to keep a steady eye on this.
Yeah, we're in a period of time right now where you're going to need a human to be making sure that your stuff is up to date, because things are, like you said, everything's changing all the time. And you may have a legacy system that was installed 2 months ago that's eating way more tokens than it needs to accomplish the same thing. And it's just not doing as well as it could be. So I think in the next 2 years, there'll be a lot of opportunity for those of us that are maintaining these systems to basically be on some type of retainer to ensure that they're maintained. But people are already starting to do it, which is part of the mission control is always looking for what's the update. And I don't think I mean, there might be some like super geniuses somewhere that are able to have it update itself intelligently in a way that's not requiring a lot of technical decisions from a person. But yeah, like the way I'm building mine is every day in the middle of the night, its job is to go out there and scrape the internet for what is in these repositories with the updates, what could be done better, and bring me a report every morning with, do I want to have it install this update? And then I can just have an agent that updates my system for me. So it's not going to be completely manual, but there's going to be a level of decision-making happening. And you may have heard this, people were having their open clause do this automatically for them. And they just ended up with viruses and, it's a big security risk to have it done automatically. And so having a human decision maker review, what exactly are we updating? What are the implications of this? If we update this, is it going to break this other thing over here? And as much as I would love for AI systems to be so intelligent that it can spot those things, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
We're back at the context conversation is if it's a major update, it's gotta like understand the context of your entire system to make sure it's not going to break something else. And it's just what's commercially available can't handle that much context. So the more your system can do for you, the more you're going to require some maintenance on it. And so that's always been true for every system we've ever built.
Yeah. I had one last question in terms of when it comes to AI budgeting, if you would, with the token usage and operating a mission control. And obviously, as things continue to increase, I'm looking at the constraint no longer being these LLMs and what they're capable of, but the constraint is more or less the demand for the computing power to execute on them. And this came from a conversation I had with a gentleman who he's worked on the executive board for large companies implementing AI, and he's more of a cautious optimist with everything. And he's talking about how now is the opportunity to take advantage of the information that's at our fingertips, but also the computing power that's at our fingertips. Because to think that we pay a retainer, let's call it $200 a month, and you're able to deploy what you're able to deploy, at some point in time, he sees a critical mass being reached or a transition being reached of, okay, now we're going to have to really ramp up the cost of this in order to facilitate the money that's being put into the computing side. Or even companies are going to find themselves having to do away with their free models altogether. And it just is a strict pay to play.
Oh, yeah.
This is probably more speculation than obviously strict fact, but I'm curious as to your purview and your reception and reflection on the horizon of where you see things.
Yeah, generally in economics, the more supply there is, the more demand there is, the supply will meet the demand, and that usually drives the price down over time. But it's not linear, and I think generally that will be the case. But yeah, we don't know where these price fluctuations are going to happen. There's some things that impact it. Is like supply may not be able to meet demand. So data centers, energy consumption. So can we build data centers fast enough to meet the demand? Because the demand's going up. The complexity of these models are going up, which requires more energy. So it requires more electricity and it requires more compute. And compute is just GPU right now anyway is basically dictated on how many GPUs, what kind of GPUs the data center has, and how much electricity it can consume. And so we have, there's also groups out there that are protesting, not to have data centers installed and all this, which I think is kind of silly. Which that's a conversation for a whole nother thing. But like the amount of energy, water, all this stuff that data centers consume is like negligible compared to like some like golf courses.
Yeah.
Cups of coffee. Like to make one cup of coffee, you know how much water it takes to make one cup of coffee?
No, how much? Like a 16-ounce cup of coffee.
Yeah, pick up a coffee at Starbucks. It's 35 gallons of water to make that. to grow the plants, to move them, everything. A cup of coffee is about 35 gallons of water. So like people are complaining about, and all the new data centers that are being built are recycling their water. It's not like it's, and so
we might have to do a data center episode.
And then there's energy concerns, but that's why they're trying to go to space and put the data centers in space.
Mm-hmm.
That's SpaceX. There's going to be a couple other competitors that come out that want to do the same thing. I think Jeff Bezos wants to do the same thing. Sounds like they're going to team up with like Google or Apple or who the fuck knows, man.
I feel like Jeff Bezos is cheating off of Elon Musk's paper, right?
Yeah, I mean, we need that competition in the market. So, but, yeah, and so we may not. It may be one of those things where like the supply can meet the demand right now, but say the demand keeps increasing and companies start taking it on, and there's the adoption of AI is not really as high as you think it is, and as it becomes more and more adopted and becomes expected, and then say, we have a limitation on some type of precious metal, or, people don't want data centers where they live, which is kind of crazy because data centers are just going to create more, it's going to improve the economy wherever it is. And so, and there's also an argument for the ecology around data centers improving, because it just makes sense for the data centers to operate in a regenerative fashion. Is a more for long-term economic reasons. You want it to be regenerative, not extractive.
Yeah.
And so, and it's going to take AI to solve these problems. So, yeah, we don't know if the price of compute could go up. The price of compute could go down. So we don't have infinite resources. And so at some point, the price of it could go up. And then it might be one of those things where the people with the most money can afford the highest level of compute, and the people who, are on the free versions, basically, like if you're on a free version right now, you're not getting the best compute. You're not getting the best out of it. I know people who are burning through $5,000 a month in tokens.
Yeah.
And there are people complaining about their $20 a month OpenAI subscription or their cloud subscription. I'm like, dude, it's wild.
Would you say too, though, I mean, if someone's burning $5,000 a month worth of tokens, I mean, I would hope they're leveraging that in an effective way. Like you mentioned before, being intelligent with your token usage or with your skill acquisition versus being a novice is burning through that many tokens doesn't necessarily mean they don't know what they're doing. It just might be they're doing that much work.
Yeah, they're doing that much. I mean, to be able to burn through that many tokens, there has to be a lot of complex reasoning happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there's a lot of complexity there. It's not just having it write poetry for you,
Yeah.
So, or look up recipes, or, trying to figure out if this rash on my knee is this or that, So, or making videos is high compute. Making images can be. So, yeah, there's, the people, in my opinion, people should be eating through as many tokens as they can to learn how to use this thing. I would, what's interesting is my budget, the amount of money I was spending on tokens is less now than it was 3 months ago.
Nice.
So, I lowered my cost. That like Manus was really expensive. Some other things were. I basically Claude has become more capable, and so I'm using other platforms less. So I've been able to reduce my overall spend. So what I did was I just went. I spent a lot with Claude, and I'm spending very little with the others.
Yeah, and to your point about the spending tokens to learn how to use tokens, it's almost like, with money, you have like learn the hard way. I learned the hard way how to manage my money. It's also with your tokens. And even with us having that skill episode, you mentioned the context in which you keep your skills. The ambition and the audaciousness of my goals got in the way of that advice. And I tried doing too much with too little. And that's burning through tokens. So it's like, okay, got it, right? I heard the advice, but then you run into the wall. You're like, yeah, Mike said, don't run into that wall. But now you've had the lesson twice because it's going to appear until it's learned. Now you see it in action, and it's really in its execution of, okay, that's what it looks like to be to put too much bloat within your skill. That's what it looks like when you're not building it effectively.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you said you were building a skill. Are you now rethinking how you're building that skill?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because I know exactly what I did was, telling on myself, I was being lazy. I just wanted one skill, just to put a transcript in and get a beautiful post-production sheet with everything that I need. But again, that's what bloated it. And what I needed to do was have the way I'm rethinking the skill is a post-production podcast skill that will delegate to the different areas within each that can also, where needed, be compounded with a voice skill. So I could have the podcast post-production skill that will focus on thumbnail design, titles. That's going to be a different one. And then I'll have one skill that's going to be focused on copywriting for YouTube, which is going to be a different skill than copywriting for Apple and Spotify. 2 different platforms, 2 different approaches. Just make those 2 different skills. Don't have one skill, chunk it all up into all your descriptions. So understanding that there is going to be more connecting the dots with the outcome that you want. And that's where I'm rethinking the approach to it.
Yeah, right.
I like it. And even, I said, my social media content, like a skill for Instagram, a skill for LinkedIn, and breaking that up instead of just having a social media manager skill. Because each platform is different.
Well, you may have a social media manager skill that delegates to the others.
Yeah, I'm seeing the organizational chart in my mind. Like the way I'm visualizing this is a skill leading to the sub skills, or really an organizational chart to say like the position leading to the sub positions that would delegate to each other to get the ultimate outcome that will then work within the business. As like you mentioned, the connectors and the engine that would be in the Ferrari that's driving at 100 miles per hour. The pistons are turning, the gas is firing, the spark plug is hitting the igniter. All these small, intricate pieces are working together to drive the whole. And it's getting more nuanced. And you mentioned system thinking into, understanding the top view, right? The outcome that I want, but also getting granular from the forest going into the trees, and even from the trees to the leaves of like, well, this is how I build it. This is how I put it together. And taking the time to do it, because as I've also heard you say you built a skill yesterday, you've spent some time with it, and you realized, all right, this isn't going where I want to go. And to the people who are listening, like it might sound tedious, but you're going to have to work these skills to get them to a point to operate in the way that you want, and knowing what you want is the first step. So,
yeah, it's like training a human being. This is how you do this thing.
And hey, we'll get it. But like, as you mentioned, all the human beings in one spot, just to recap everything that we talked about for the last hour, because I think we got a lot of good stuff for folks who are listening. Business owners trying to figure out AI and how to use it. But the big question is, will that actually make a difference in my business? How will that touch my bottom line? Like, let's just get blunt and honest. How does this make me more money? That's what they all want to know. Using agents make you an expert. If you're at that point where you're using agents within your business, you are a lot farther than you think, which is good news. The other bad news, though, is there's still a lot more to go, because now you need to stack those on top of each other. The average person, given the power of the engineer, if you're not used to thinking in systems, if you're not used to operating as an engineer, you have just been handed the tools to do so. Maybe it's a skill you acquire. Maybe it's a skill you outsource. Either way, you pay with time or you pay with money. The dashboard will get you buy-in, and a dashboard is really undercutting what you're actually getting, because the dashboard is just a Ferrari in the driveway. When you connect the engine, you connect everything, you get dashboard 2.0 or a mission control. Mission control will burn through tokens if you don't know what you're doing. So understanding the novice and expert approach of when you're running out of tokens. The 20x usage for a max plan, 20 times usage versus your pro plan. So it's worth paying, like going to Costco. Just get the bulk. It's cheaper when you get it in bulk. Let's just say that. And then how to spend less tokens. Be intelligent about how you're building a skill, not building bloated skills. Skills should not be more than 200 lines. The skill is a position. Don't stuff too many positions within one skill. Again, if you like the visualization of an organizational chart, think of the skills within that and how they will be working together. There's more to an agent than a skill, but every agent needs one. Multiple skills for simply copywriting. And Claude will TLDR your ass. Too long, didn't read. Here you go. Just so you know, if that's what happens when you put too much bloat in it. So niche skills, not bloated skills, will be the best approach. Context windows, getting to the end of the chat. If you get to the compression, you've gone too far. So having a chat handoff or a handoff doc, when you feel like you're about 40 to 50% of the way, maybe it's time to build that handoff doc. And the beauty about that is you get to choose the context in which gets passed over. You are in control of the context that gets handed off into the new chat. So then you handle exactly the quality of that handoff. And then the model that you're using matters, whether it's Opus 4.7, Sonnet, or Haiku, or if you are using a dashboard that could deploy and use other LLMs as well. Diversify a little bit, just like your portfolio, diversify your token use. And of course, mission control, looking for updates on itself. This isn't a set it and forget it type thing. It needs to be attentive to the updates, and it still needs a human eye and a human touch. But the adoption of AI is not as high as you think. So if you've made it to the episode, not only are you rare, but you're a lot farther along than most. If you want to go even farther, if you want to go even faster, check out the School Community Full Stack. Mike is dropping skills, gems, and more. And you have other entrepreneurs who are where you are, farther than where you are, or catching up to where you are, who are implementing AI and growing as well. So you're lacking if you're not stacking with the Full Stack community. That's Mike. I'm AI Hot Chocolate. We still need to get Mike a nickname. We'll catch you guys next time.